Welcome back to our latest deep dive. I have to say, usually when I sit down to prep for these, I have a pretty solid idea of what I'm walking into.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, like if we're doing tech, I know we're talking about chips and code. If we're doing history, I'm ready for dates and maps and all that. But
This is
today,
a little different.
today I looked at the stack of notes you sent over, and I honestly had to check if you sent me the wrong file.
I was wondering if you'd say that. It definitely catches you off guard if you aren't expecting it.
Off guard is putting it mildly. I mean, I thought we were going to be talking about religion, the usual stuff, rituals, spirituality, maybe some kind of metaphysics.
Right.
But this material, reads like a constitution
Yeah.
or like I don't know, a blueprint for a superstate or something.
That is exactly the reaction the source material is looking for, actually. We're diving into a really comprehensive analysis of the Quran today, specifically Surah 2, verses 143 to 152, and then verse 177. And the core argument running through all these sources is that we have fundamentally misunderstood what these texts are actually doing.
Right. The whole premise is that we've been looking at a set of blueprints for a skyscraper and treating them like a book of poetry.
Yes.
Like we've been reciting the rhymes instead of pouring the concrete.
That's a perfect way to frame it. The sources we're analyzing argue that this text isn't proposing a religion in the way the modern Western mind defines it.
Which is usually pretty private, right?
Exactly, as a private, personal set of beliefs or rituals. Instead, it's proposing a system, a sociology, a really comprehensive social order designed to unify humanity.
And that's our hook for today's deep dive. We're going to explore this whole concept of architecting the universal divine system. And I want to warn everyone listening right now. You need to take off your Sunday school hat or your temple hat and put on a hard hat because the text we're looking at is incredibly pragmatic.
Highly pragmatic.
It demands what the sources call flawless equity and pragmatic results in the real world.
It's not interested in how pious you feel. It's interested in what you build. And that distinction is really where we have to start.
Okay, so let's jump right into section 1. The outline calls this the Great Pivot, and it centers on that specific verse you mentioned, 2:177.
Yeah.
Now, looking at the historical context provided in the notes, this verse seems to have dropped right in the middle of a massive controversy.
Oh, it was a controversy of the decade for that early community. You really have to set the scene here.
Paint the picture for us.
So the early Muslim community is in Medina. They're establishing their identity. And suddenly there's this command to change the direction of prayer.
The Qibla.
Right, the Qibla. From Jerusalem to Mecca.
And people just lost their minds over this.
Completely lost it. It became the defining topic of conversation. Like, do we face east? Do we face west? What does it mean if we turn this way instead of that way?
Right.
It was becoming the metric by which they measured their faith.
Which, makes total sense. Humans love external markers.
Oh, absolutely.
We love to say, I stand here, I face there, therefore I am a good person. It's measurable.
It's a box you can check. But then, right in the absolute heat of this debate, verse 177 comes down. And the source material highlights this as a major paradigm shift.
Yeah.
The verse literally says, it is not righteousness that you turn your faces towards the east or the west.
Which is, frankly, that's shocking.
It is.
You're reading a religious text and it basically tells you the direction you are all arguing about. It doesn't matter.
It's completely dismantling the ritual for the sake of the reality. The source argues that the text is separating the symbol from the substance.
Okay.
Turning your face is a symbol. It's just geography. But righteousness, that is something else entirely.
So if it's not about the geometry of where I'm standing, what is it? Because the notes really emphasize that the text immediately pivots to this idea of active righteousness.
And it defines it very specifically. It doesn't just say righteousness is having a pure heart.
Right, that's too vague.
Way too vague. It says righteousness is defined by impact. It lists tangible actions, fulfilling the needs of the marginalized, freeing slaves, keeping promises, and this is the really crucial one, sharing wealth.
But there's a nuance in the translation there that I found so fascinating. It doesn't just say give money, it says give wealth in spite of love for it.
Yes, that is the ultimate friction point. Because it's easy to give away things you don't need.
Oh, sure. Here, take this old coat. I bought a new one anyway.
Exactly. Or here's some spare change in my console. That's charity, sure. But the system described here demands that you give what you actually desire to keep.
So the validation of the act is the pain of the sacrifice.
In a way, yeah. It's about prioritizing the collective welfare over your own personal accumulation. If you love that wealth and you still give it to a relative or an orphan or a traveler in need, that proves you're committed to the system.
You're putting the social fabric above your own net worth.
You are. The notes also mention steadfastness as a key metric here.
Right. Like, are you reliable in adversity?
Exactly. When the economy crashes, do you hold the line? When you make a contract, do you keep it? Even if it becomes incredibly inconvenient for you.
So it's about integrity under pressure.
The source argues that these are the true metrics of the divine system, not how perfectly you align your prayer rug with a compass.
To really drive this distinction home, the difference between the ritual and the system, the source material uses an analogy that I think is just brilliant.
The soldier analogy.
For the soldier analogy, I want to walk through this because it really visualizes the problem perfectly.
It's a great mental image. Let's construct it. Imagine a soldier.
Okay, I'm picturing him.
He's standing at attention.
Yeah.
He is wearing a pristine uniform. I mean, the boots are polished until you can literally see your face in them.
Spit shines.
Spit shine. The belt buckle is gleaming. The creases in the trousers are razor sharp.
He looks the part.
He looks perfect.
Yeah.
An officer walks by, and snap, he executes the most technically perfect salute you've ever seen. The angle of the elbow, the stiffness of the hand, it is absolute textbook.
Okay, so he's a good soldier.
Well, he is performing the rituals of a soldier flawlessly. But here is the twist the source presents. Imagine that this soldier finishes his shift, goes home, takes off the uniform, and hangs it in the closet.
Right.
But imagine that outside his house, there is no army.
Wait, no army?
No army, no state, no command structure, no logistics, no borders to defend, no mission whatsoever.
So he's just a guy playing dress up.
He is a cosplayer. He's performing gestures that have totally lost their meaning. The salute is a symbol of hierarchy and discipline within a system.
But if the system isn't there?
If the system doesn't exist, the salute is just you waving your hand in the empty air.
Wow, that is a devastating critique.
It really is. The source argues that rituals like the Qibla, the prayer motions, the fast, these are the uniform of the divine system. They're designed to instill discipline.
They identify the core.
Exactly. They create a sense of shared identity.
Hmm.
But the uniform is not the mission.
The uniform exists to serve the army. The army doesn't exist to serve the uniform.
Precisely. If the system, meaning the actual state, the community welfare, the justice mechanism, the protection of the weak, if that isn't functioning, then the rituals are void.
You're just standing in a broken society, polishing your boots, saluting an empty room.
That's exactly it.
I think that hits hard because we see it in religious communities all over the world, people obsessing over the polish.
Oh, constantly.
Is your beard the right length? Is your scarf tied the exact right way? Did you pronounce that Arabic vowel correctly?
Right.
And meanwhile, the neighborhood right outside their window is falling apart. Poverty, corruption, injustice.
And the source says, you have confused the uniform for the war. You think because you're dressed right, you're winning. But you haven't even stepped onto the battlefield of actual human problem solving.
So this leads to a pretty logical question, I think. If the uniform isn't the point, and if the direction east or west isn't righteousness, why have a uniform at all?
That's the natural follow-up.
Why did the Quran make such a huge deal about changing the Qibla in the first place? Why not just say, pray wherever, it's all good, guys?
Well, that brings us to section 2 of our deep dive, the compass of the system. This is where we get into the political science of the text.
Okay.
Because the source argues that the Qibla isn't just a spiritual orientation, it is a absolute political necessity.
How so?
Because you cannot build a unified system without a center of gravity. Think about it. Every nation has a capital.
Every corporation has a headquarters.
Right. Every army has a command center. The source describes the Qibla as the symbol of the system. It's the focal point that turns a scattered random crowd into a unified body.
Okay, that makes sense. You need a center to rally around. But why the shift? The early Muslims faced Jerusalem, Beit al-Maqdis.
Right.
Then they were told to turn to the Kaaba in Mecca. The notes say this wasn't just a random GPS update. It was an ideological revolution.
It was massive. To really grasp why, you have to look at what Jerusalem represented at that specific time. Beit al-Maqdis was the absolute center of the Jewish tradition. It was the focal point of the Israelites.
Which is a lineage.
It is a lineage. It's tribal.
Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking, in that era, you were born into that system.
Yeah.
It was exclusive to a very specific ancestry. It was the God of Israel.
Right.
Now, if the Quran was proposing a universal divine system, one for all mankind, regardless of race, birth, or tribe, it couldn't be tethered to a capital city that belonged to just one family tree.
It needed neutral ground.
It needed universal ground, and this is exactly why the Kaaba was chosen. The source argues that the Kaaba was built for all mankind, and crucially, the text links it back to Abraham.
Now, hold on, because this is the part that always confuses people.
Let's clear it up.
Jews claim Abraham, Christians claim Abraham. How does going back to Abraham make it less sectarian? Wouldn't that just be picking a side?
That is the genius of the argument presented in the source material. The text explicitly strips Abraham of those later labels.
Right.
Yeah. There is a verse cited that says, effectively, Abraham was not a Jew, nor was he a Christian.
Which, if you think about it historically, is just true.
It's a chronological fact.
He lived way before Moses or Jesus. He predates the institutions entirely.
Exactly. He is the root. The source calls him the universal figure. By linking the Kaaba to Abraham, the system is totally bypassing sectarian divisions that came centuries later.
It's going back to the source code.
The source code of humanity. It's saying, we are not Jewish, we are not Christian, we are not Arab, we are human, we are of the family of Abraham.
So when you turn to the Kaaba, the argument is that you aren't worshiping a black box in the desert.
No, not at all.
You are orienting yourself toward a symbol of anti-tribalism.
You are saluting the flag of a borderless humanity. You're declaring that your ultimate loyalty is to God and to humanity as a whole, not to your specific racial or ethnic tribe.
But the notes mention that this was psychologically devastating for people at the time.
Oh, it was incredibly difficult. We really can't underestimate the power of tradition.
Yeah.
Imagine you're an Arab in the 7th century. Your pride, your protection, your entire identity is wrapped up in your tribe, your ancestors.
It's everything.
Or if you were a Jewish convert, your identity was tied to Jerusalem. That's where your fathers prayed. That's where the prophets walked.
And now you're just told to turn your back on it, literally.
Ideally, you're being told to turn away from your racial pride.
Mm-hmm.
The source calls it an ideological revolution because it forced people to make a choice. What is actually more important to you, your heritage or the universal system?
Your tribe or humanity.
Exactly.
It's kind of like asking a fierce nationalist today to tear up their country's flag and salute a flag that represents the whole world. That hurts the ego.
It absolutely crushes the ego. And the source argues that was the entire point. The Qibla change was a test. It was designed to filter out the people who were just there for the tribe, for the people who were actually committed to the system.
This friction between the universal system and the tribal mindset, it brings us to the villains of this story, essentially.
Yes, the antagonists.
Section 3 calls them the obstacle. And the source uses a metaphor that I just absolutely love. The shopkeeper.
It is a very cynical but incredibly sharp critique.
Let's hear it.
The source posits that when religion stops being a movement and starts being a profession, the leadership essentially becomes a class of shopkeepers.
And every shopkeeper needs customers.
Right. Think about it. If I open a shop selling shoes and you open a shop right next door selling shoes, we are competitors.
Naturally.
I need people to buy my shoes, not yours. So what do?
You market, you differentiate. You say, my shoes are the only real shoes. Those shoes next door, they're going to ruin your feet.
Exactly. You create brand loyalty. And in the religious context, brand loyalty is sectarianism.
Ah, I see.
The source argues that religious leaders, what it calls the priesthood, actively create and maintain divisions to keep their specific group of customers loyal to them.
So it's divide and rule.
It's the oldest trick in the book. If humanity were to actually unite into one universal system, as the Quran proposes, what the text calls the Ummati Wasat, then the sectarian leader loses his job.
Because in a universal system, you don't need a middleman to interpret the specific tribal rules for you.
Exactly. There's no need for a highly paid specialist in Sect A dogmas if Sect A has completely dissolved into the broader human family.
Right.
So the source argues these leaders have a massive vested interest in preventing unity. They need you to hate the guy across the street because that hate is what keeps you in their shop.
Wow. And there's a very specific accusation in the notes here about this. It quotes a line saying, these leaders hide the truth even though they recognize it as they recognize their own sons.
That is a very powerful idiomatic expression in the original language. Recognizing something like your own son, it means there's absolute zero doubt.
You don't look at your son and ask, who is that?
Never. You just know.
So the accusation is that they know the universal system is the truth. They know Abraham wasn't a sectarian. They know unity is the ultimate goal.
But they suppress it. They actively hide it. Why? Because unity is terrible for business. Division is highly profitable. Conflict keeps the donations coming in.
Right.
So we end up with this deeply tragic irony where religion, which claims to be about peace, becomes the primary source of bloodshed in the world.
Because it's been weaponized into tribalism by the people running the shops.
Exactly. And the source warns that as long as we view religion through the lens of these shopkeepers, we will never achieve a universal system. We're just going to remain warring tribes wearing different hats.
So, okay, we've established the uniform, the rituals, we've established the headquarters, the Qibla, and the saboteurs, the shopkeepers.
Right.
Now let's talk about the mission itself. If this really is a system or an army, what is it supposed to actually do? Section 4 introduces this concept you mentioned, Umat e Wasat.
Yeah, this is usually translated as the middle nation or the just community. But the source focuses heavily on their actual job description, which is found in the Arabic phrase shuhada ala nas,
Witnesses over humanity.
or supervisors, guardians. The core idea is that this community isn't just supposed to be good for its own sake. It is explicitly supposed to be the custodian of justice for the entire globe.
See, that sounds, well, it sounds a bit arrogant, doesn't it?
It does.
We are the supervisors of the world. It sounds like the rationale for literally every empire that ever invaded a country for their own good.
It absolutely sounds arrogant until you read the fine print in the source material, because the text applies a strict beyond reproach standard to this role.
Like the clean your room rule before you try to fix the world.
On a geopolitical scale, the source argues you cannot be a supervisor if you are corrupt. You cannot be a witness if your own testimony is false.
Makes sense.
You have absolutely zero moral authority to correct others if your own house is in massive disorder.
The notes mention a historical example here that I think really clarifies this. It talks about the early Muslims criticizing the Persian Empire Kisra or the Roman Empire Caesar.
Right. The early community looked at these massive, sprawling empires and said, you are oppressing your people. You are crushing the peasants with taxes. This is fundamentally unjust.
They position themselves as liberators.
But the source says you can only do that if your peasants are treated perfectly.
Exactly. If you criticize Rome for tyranny, but your own streets are full of beggars, or your own courts take bribes, or your own women are unsafe walking at night,
then your criticism is a complete joke. You are just another failed state pointing fingers at a successful state.
So the prerequisite for being the universal system is that you have to actually build a working model of justice first.
You have to be the proof of concept. The source strongly implies that the rest of the world should look at this community and say, look at how they live. Look at their justice. Look at their peace. We want that.
Right.
That is how you witness over humanity. Not by conquering them with swords, but by outperforming them in equity.
And this leads to a pretty somber moment in the source material. The text reflects on the current reality of the Muslim world. It says, two Muslims meet and read an elegy.
An elegy is a poem for the dead. They mourn. Because when they look at the current state of the community, it is the polar opposite of the Umat e Wasat.
Instead of being witnesses over humanity, the community has basically become a witness against itself.
Right. Their broken societies, the staggering poverty, the endless infighting, these stand as evidence that they have lost the blueprint entirely.
Yeah.
They are no longer the guardians. They are the ones in desperate need of guardianship.
That is a really harsh mirror to hold up, but I think it leads us directly into why societies break in the first place. The source dives into human psychology here, specifically the battle between two concepts, Takathur and Istabak.
Yes.
And this was probably my favorite part of the reading because it explains so much of modern capitalism, honestly.
It really does. This is the engine room of the system. Let's start with Takathur. It comes from the root word for plenty or more. The source defines it as competition in accumulation.
The rat race. The insatiable desire for more.
He has one car, I need two. He has $1 million, I need 10. He has a factory, I need a massive conglomeration. It's the mutual rivalry in just acquiring things.
And the source shares this hilarious yet kind of tragic anecdote about the rich man and his bathroom. I have to recount this because it's so perfect.
Please do. The 3 pools.
So a wealthy man is showing a guest his new massive mansion. He's showing off every single detail.
Of course.
He takes him down to the bathhouse, and there are 3 pools built into the floor. He points to the first one and says, this one is hot water.
Nice.
He points to the second one, this one is cold water.
Standard luxury for a mansion.
But then the guest points to the third one, which is completely empty, just a dry hole in the ground. And he asks, what's that one for?
And the rich man says,
Oh, that's for when I don't feel like bathing.
it captures the absurdity so perfectly. That is the definition of Takathur. Accumulation purely for the sake of accumulation.
It serves absolutely no purpose.
It fulfills no human need. It's just excess for the ego.
The source also uses the buffalo analogy to explain this.
The buffalo with the massive horns. The source describes a buffalo that has grown these huge, heavy horns, a giant external show of power and dominance.
Right.
But the buffalo gives very little milk.
Big horns, no milk.
A society built purely on Takathur looks really impressive from the outside. It has glittering skyscrapers. It has massive shopping malls. It has a high GDP.
Horns are huge.
But is there any milk? Is there actual social welfare? Is the average person able to feed their family? Is there justice in the courts? If not, it's just a buffalo with big horns dragging itself down.
Now, usually when religious texts critique greed like this, the solution is asceticism.
Right.
Stop wanting things, kill the ego, sell everything you own and go live in a cave somewhere.
Detach from the material world entirely. Deny the self.
But this source material rejects that. And I found that so incredibly refreshing. It explicitly says, do not kill the desire.
This is a really crucial insight.
Yeah.
The source argues that the competitive drive, the ambition, the intense desire to excel, even the ego itself, these are God-given forces.
They're natural.
They are the engine of all human progress. If you kill them, you don't get a saint, you get a vegetable. A society of people who want nothing builds nothing.
So if we aren't supposed to kill the drive to be number one, what are we supposed to do with it?
We channel it. The concept is istabak, specifically the phrase istabak al-khairat, competing in good deeds.
I see. So you take that exact same burning energy, that absolute need to be better than the guy next door, and you just change the scoreboard.
You completely change the metric of success. Instead of competing on who has the biggest bank balance, you compete on who has benefited humanity the most.
Who built the best hospital?
Right. Who solved the local water crisis first? Who educated the most orphans?
It's the exact same engine, just heading to a different destination.
And the source makes a fascinating point about the arena of these two competitions. In Takathur accumulation, the world is very small. If I buy this prime plot of land, you cannot have it.
It's a zero-sum game.
Exactly. Which inevitably leads to conflict. If I want more, I eventually have to take it from you.
Takathur leads to war.
Always. But in istabak doing good, the source says the arena is as vast as the heavens and earth. My doing good doesn't prevent you from doing good at all.
In fact, it might help.
Right. If I build a great school, it might inspire you to build a university.
It turns envy into emulation.
Yes. I want to be like him because he saved 1,000 lives, not I want to take the money he has. It creates a positive feedback loop that lifts the entire society up rather than tearing it apart.
That is a profound psychological pivot. It harnesses the human ego rather than trying to destroy it. And this brings us to the redefinition of a very common religious term. Section 6, dhikr.
Dhikr. If you ask almost anyone what this word means today, they will say remembrance of God. And they will likely visualize sitting in a dark room, counting beads, chanting God, God, God over and over again.
The source is pretty savage about this image. It calls it a satirical view of religion. It totally mocks the idea that vibrating in a room chanting who is going to change the world.
It argues that this is a severe distortion brought in by later mysticism and Sufism. The source actually looks at the strict linguistic root of the word in classical Arabic.
And what does it mean?
Dhikr means eminence, honor, renown. Think of it more like a legacy or a reputation.
So remembering God implies raising God's reputation.
Exactly. But how do you raise the reputation of a divine system? You don't do it by sitting in a corner chanting its name. You do it by making the system actually work in the real world.
It's like PR by results.
Precisely. If I claim to have the absolute best architectural blueprints in the world, but I live in a shack that's constantly falling down on my head,
You're going to get laughed at.
you're going to laugh at me. But if I use those blueprints to build a magnificent, highly functional, beautifully safe city, my reputation goes through the roof.
So the argument is, if the universal system produces a society that is incredibly safe, just, wealthy, and peaceful, the rest of the world looks at it and says, wow, that system is amazing.
That is dare. That is raising the eminence of the law. You are making the system stand tall among the nations of the world.
And the flip side must be true then. If your society is a total mess,
Then you are deeply humiliating the system. You are forgetting God no matter how many prayer beads you count every night, because you are dragging the reputation of the divine order straight into the mud.
You're making it look incompetent to everyone else.
Exactly.
This really strips away all the magical thinking, doesn't it? It makes everything so unbelievably practical.
Which brings us perfectly to the final section, the ultimate litmus test for the whole thing. The source literally calls it pragmatism.
And it offers us the cooler analogy. Now, anyone listening right now who lives in a really hot climate like Texas or Arizona or the Middle East, you are going to feel this one in your bones.
It is a very visceral example. The source says, imagine you buy a brand new air cooler. You bring it home, it's 100 degrees outside.
Miserable.
You plug it in, the motor hums, the fan spins up, it makes a ton of noise. Vrrr. It sounds incredibly powerful.
But the room stays hot.
The room is absolutely boiling. You are sitting there sweating profusely. Now, do you sit there and say to yourself, well, the cooler has really good intentions?
The noise is very holy.
Right. The noise is pious. Maybe it will cool me down in the afterlife.
No. You say this piece of junk is broken.
You unplug it, you try to fix the wiring, or you throw it out and you get a new one that actually works. The source argues that this is the exact test for the divine system. Religion is the cooler. Society is the room.
That's the equation right there.
If the cooler is running, meaning if the mosques are packed full, the sermons are incredibly loud, the debates about the Qibla are fierce and passionate, but the room is hot.
Meaning society is full of poverty and injustice and fear and ignorance.
Then the cooler's broken, period.
You cannot separate the practice from the result. A religion that doesn't produce social well-being is exactly like a cooler that doesn't produce cold air. It is functionally useless.
The source cites a core Quranic principle here. That which benefits mankind remains on the earth.
It's like survival of the fittest, but survival of the beneficial.
Exactly. The foam on the river washes away, the scum disappears, but the clear water that actually nourishes the earth, that remains. The source concludes that the only absolute proof that a system is actually divine is that it solves human problems.
If it doesn't work, it's not divine. Or at least the specific version you're practicing isn't the real thing.
Precisely. It puts the onus entirely back on the community. You cannot just blame God. You cannot blame fate or destiny. If the cooler isn't cooling, check the wiring. Check the water levels.
Don't just sit there and pray for cold air.
Don't just pray for cold air while the machine is broken.
Wow. So let's take a breath and look back at the ground we've covered in this deep dive today. Because this wasn't just a slight tweak of religious understanding. This was a full demolition and a complete rebuild from the ground up.
It really was. We started with the very idea that rituals are just a uniform, entirely useless if you don't have an army to serve.
And then we moved to the Qibla, being a political headquarters designed to deliberately break tribalism and unify all of humanity under one common flag.
We exposed the shopkeepers, the vested priesthood interests that actively keep us divided just to protect their own profits and relevance.
We learned that we shouldn't be trying to kill our ambition with asceticism, but instead we need to channel it into istibak, actively competing with each other to benefit humanity.
And we ended with the powerful idea that the only thing that actually matters, the only true dicker, is practical, tangible results.
Does it work?
Does it actually work? Does it help real people in the real world?
It totally reframes the concept of Islam or din, not as a personal weekend hobby or a set of magical incantations, but as a binding global social contract, literally a construction project.
A very detailed blueprint for a universal divine system.
Which I think leaves us with a pretty heavy so what for the listener to chew on.
It really does, because the source suggests that the goal was always to create a heaven on earth. Social justice, total equity, peace as a strict prerequisite for the heaven hereafter.
You can't just skip the first step.
You cannot claim to be diligently building for the next life while you are actively destroying or ignoring this one.
And it forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question as we wrap up today. As you, the listener, look at your own life and our own modern institutions, whether they are religious or strictly secular.
Are we all just soldiers without an army?
Are we just standing around polishing our boots? Are we perfecting our salute? Are we arguing endlessly on the internet about exactly which degree on the compass of face, while outside our window the actual world is burning and we have absolutely no system to fix it?
And are our institutions actually cooling the room? Or are they just making a lot of very loud, very holy noise?
That is the question to carry with you this week. Check your uniform, sure. Make sure your boots are tied. But much more importantly, check the system you are serving. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Keep thinking, keep questioning. We'll see you next time.